Good morning. I hope everyone's had a good day. I hope everyone has, found a way to stay warm as we're going through this cold snap. And I hope everyone has kept up with the reading because, once again, we have a quiz on Friday and it's basically plot details. It's nothing fancy. I'll give more details about that here in just a second or so. As we go through today, we're going to spend a lot of time in the novel. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about the research paper. If you have questions, please remember to ask them in class as we're going through. Uh, and I'll try to address all of those questions as people get ready. Remember to work on the citations um, and the works cited page. Make sure all that formatting is correct. Let's do some quick comments about Friday. I believe I'm going to double check this, but the quiz will go live at 8:15. The quiz has 20 matching questions. Usually I allow about 20 minutes for a quiz. They will all be around 20 matching questions. And I really think that almost everyone should be able to get through 20 matching questions in 20 minutes. Because this is the first quiz, and because the majority of you are going to be working from home, I'm just going to allow 45 minutes. I'm basically going to allow the class period for that quiz. I'm not going to do a video on Friday. There won't be a daily writing on Friday. The quiz is going to take attendance, so please make sure you've got it taken by 8:45, or start taking it at 8:15. Have it finished by 9. It's a 45-minute quiz. 4 people who need to come to class, and I'll try to make sure I give you more than enough time to get the thing done as well. Melissa, Morgan, Brady, and Josh. And we'll work on some writing things very, very quickly. Do an abbreviated writing lab, but get your credit for your attendance at the writing lab, which again, remember, is 10 or 15% of your grade. I can't remember. The writing labs count. And then take care of the quiz from there. The characters on the quiz. Look, Carl, Jeremy, Joe, and Lila, we've talked about them in class. They are the key characters in the novel. If you don't know these names, I get the right to question whether you've read the novel. These names may require thought. Dan Lockwood, Douglas Lockwood. Please make sure you keep the two Lockwoods separate. Rupert is the cop. It's Max Rupert. I didn't put anything for the lawyer from the Innocence Project. I think he gets mentioned on the quiz as something that Rupert does. And then Virgil, who is Carl's friend and who plays a role in the novel as well. So as you're looking through the names, there's 4 of the bigger names, and then there's these other names, and I think the Lockwoods are certainly important. There's a key element for each of them. And Rupert is certainly important, and Virgil has some key elements. I'm trying not to be picky. As I write the questions, I'm trying not to create trivia as I write the questions. I hope I've got just the basic plot details. All I want for these quizzes is sort of a long-term reading check, a plot overview. The next thing I want to talk about is the idea of verisimilitude again, the idea of how accurate is this to real life. We've talked earlier about this was very accurate to real life when we talk about the cost of college. We talked about the difficulty of getting through college. We talked about family back home still being there. Okay. There are some things where, and I've used this quote several times through the presentation today, a lot of stars have to align for this to work. It comes from page 202. But he's just been knocked out. He's been in the trunk of his car. He has found a way because of the lights and everything else and the trunk to get out of the car, to escape the cinder blocks that are tied to his legs. He avoids getting shot. Okay. Then, just as he's about to collapse, just as the blizzard is about to get, you know, strong and really life-threatening. He finds a cabin. There's a card table and 4 chairs. Okay, it's a cabin. There's a wood-burning stove, but there's kindling, there's matches, there's logs. And I mean, people that I know who have cabins talk about they really do want to get some of the matches out of there in case there's mice or something that nibble on them, that sort of thing. And maybe that was, folks who were living on strike anything matches, which these seem to be, by the way. There happened to be food. There happened to be the couch and other supplies to make snowshoes and clothing to help him survive the weather. There's a lot of stars that have to align to make this work. And I think when you talk about verisimilitude and you talk about luck, maybe it's been set up, and I'll talk about that at the end of this presentation today. But willing suspension of disbelief is an important element of reading. Can we set aside the idea that this can't happen, that this certainly can't happen in this way? And can we set that aside and therefore keep on reading? This is the one part of the novel where I had some trouble. There were just a lot of things that aligned that I am not sure actually would. Now, obviously, they had to align because as he, the novel's over if he dies. Which brings me to also this term Deus ex machina. Okay, Deus ex machina is Latin for God in the machine, as it says in the slide. Literally, in the ancient theater, they would have a god lowered from the ceiling onto the stage to stop a war, to end the proceedings, to save the day. All right. Now it comes up with this idea there's a new character, there's a new force or event that suddenly shows up to solve a seemingly hopeless situation. And when we think about seemingly hopeless situations, obviously Lila getting kidnapped and the end of the novel start coming into play. And so as I am looking at whether this qualifies as a Deus ex machina, he just happens to have the extra cell phone. Okay, it's kind of set up. Detective Rupert actually picks up the phone. Perhaps. I mean, he's kind of been taking care of Joe anyway. The cell phones never lose service. That's true. And then you've got the perfect shots fired at the perfect time to save Lila's life and to prevent her from getting raped. And then don't forget at the end, there's $100,000 that Lila and Joe get to split. So the financial problems are suddenly taken care of. Jeremy is going to be taken care of because there's money to take care of them. Excuse me. That's a lot. That seems to me to be that God in the machine kind of thing, that sudden realization. Or not sudden realization, that sudden saving thing that just appears out of nowhere. However, there's a question of whether the author set this all up. Remember, we're starting with a sense of dread, of premonition, an internal third eye, the fates whispered in the ear, and a lot of stars have to align for this to work. All of those words set up the fact that perhaps this is more about luck than skill after all. And I think we have to question whether Eskins did it intentionally. I have no idea. But I do think it's possible to look at a contrived ending, something that we would condemn as a Deus ex machina, and say there's enough there earlier in the novel about fate and about luck and about premonitions where the stars did align And this does work. And as we think about that, there are a couple other things I think with the Deus Ex Machina to look at. Does it ruin the novel? Does it overcome the characterization? Or is Joe still a pretty complex character? Does it overwhelm overwhelm the conflicts? Perhaps it does. In this case, the conflicts that should be remaining at the end about what happens tomorrow, how do I take care of Jeremy, how do I go back to school, what kind of job can I get? $100,000 buys a lot of time. Does it overwhelm the symbolism or the language? We'll talk about the snow later. Sorry for that deep breath. Because for me, that's a bit of a question whether it overwhelms it. Does it detract from the theme? And again, we can even argue that perhaps there was no theme to detract from. Certainly, I think the novel Ordinary Grace, when we get to that one, will have much more of a theme than this one. And does it make the reader forget about connections you've made to real life? Perhaps that hunting cabin connection works for you, and so you're happy that the hunting cabin saved his life because you've got fond memories of a hunting cabin. So that part doesn't ruin it. Perhaps you all want to win the lottery. $100,000 wins the lottery is like winning the lottery. Perhaps it doesn't overwhelm the connection. Perhaps the idea of the snow and everything else works. I don't know. So I'm not sure it ruins the novel. I think a lot of times the Deus Ex Machina ruins the novel. When I was a kid growing up, we watched a lot of Westerns. That was what was on every late night movie. And a lot of the Westerns had the cavalry coming in at the last minute. The stagecoach is running away. The robbers are chasing them. The driver has been shot. He can't hold on to the team anymore. They're about to head to the cliff, and the cavalry comes running over the hill. The best cowboy, soldier, rider, whatever you want to call him, gets to the stage, pulls the horses back so they don't go over the cliff. The robbers are routed. The gold is saved. The farm is that the gold was headed for is saved. The maiden in the stagecoach gets reunited with her boyfriend. Everybody lives happily ever after. Sometimes I think that ruined a perfectly good movie up to that point. When I was a kid, I didn't think so. Now I do. So this one didn't ruin the connection for me because I just made a weird connection about other Deus Ex Machina experiences. I talked about snow earlier, and I think on the slide, I think I'm going to mention symbolism, but I want to talk about how snow plays into this novel. Carl gives us this idea of he wishes it would snow. We have a contrast in the novel between peace and beauty and the fact that snow nearly killed Joe. And then the key piece of the snow, the key piece of plot development, symbolism, tying everything together, denouement, for lack of a better phrase, is with the snow at the end of the novel on page 300, where it talks about a heavy snow had began to fall outside, and by the time we left the restaurant, Lila's car had been covered by an inch of it. Right? Snow is traditionally used as a symbol of equality, a symbol of death and burial, a symbol of purity, a symbol of corruption. And I should back up and talk about the fact that when we're talking about snow as equality, it's the fact that if you're not in a blizzard, if the snow is just coming straight down, it tends to level everything out. The death and burial is, I think, pretty obvious. It buries things. The symbol of purity, I think, is pretty obvious. When it's new fallen snow, it's white, it's pure, it's usually viewed as beautiful unless you have to shovel 12 to 18 inches of the stuff. And then the symbol of corruption obviously comes into play when it's been driven over dirt, and when it's melted and dirt has gotten into it and it's almost a grayish black. The purity of the white is gone and it is now a symbol of corruption. However, I think Eskens does something far different here. On page 300, after the snow is coming down, he says, "I could not stop smiling. Heaven could be here on earth." Again, thinking back about Carl, so it's providing this memory. Then he felt the coldness against his skin, so now it's providing a physical sensation. It's tying back into this contrast. Again, the snow had nearly killed him before. It was a thing of beauty to Carl. Now it is cold against the warm skin. You've got that same sort of contrast, cold and warm, peace and beauty versus killing. Then he performs an action. He studied the crystalline flakes. But we get back to Carl because Carl has just died and the snow is evaporating into another existence. And so we're back to death, heaven, whether heaven is here on earth, whether heaven is heaven. Questions that Carl raised in one of their conversations. The snow is bringing all of that back. In the second column, if you take a look, not only is he listening, okay, or not only is he feeling, excuse me, he is also listening. And then he is breathing. And then he is savoring. And we've got sound and smell and feel. So he is truly alive. There are all of the senses being brought into play here. And so when you take a look at this novel, we've got the idea of death, which is the absence of life. You've got the inability to feel, the inability to have emotions like smiling or savoring. And then you've got life with taste, touch, feel, and everything else, the ability to study, the ability to perform those actions of feeling and listening. And so now I think snow has become a metaphor for everything that's happened in the novel. And it's going a step beyond just, I wish it would snow. And in a lot of ways, if I'm being really cynical, I would say that the snow was cheesy at the end. But I think Eskens does a fairly good job here of giving us snow as a wrap up. And he does a good enough job of building it up with those little quotations that we talked about on a previous slide. All right, for today, here's the daily writing. Does that resolution with Dan Lockwood constitute a deus ex machina? Why or why not? And it's up to you. All I'm asking is that you support it with concrete details from the book. Give me a good reason why or why not. That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking you to agree with me. If you want to, that's fine. If you disagree with me, just have a good reason. All right? And again, please remember, Friday is the quiz. The quiz goes in the grade book as a quiz, so that's a big chunk of it. The quiz is your attendance this time around. There is no daily writing. There is no video. It's just the quiz. It starts at 8:15. Please start at 8:15 so that you're sure to get it done. And then those of you who I won't see until next Wednesday, hope all of you have a good weekend. As usual, I'll send out an email outlining the class for the week of the 15th. I'll send that out on Monday probably, since we have a 3-day weekend with the holiday. Hope everybody enjoys that 3-day weekend, and we'll see you next week.